This video is the first of 23 videos which walk through the setup and the various labs for the 70-411 exam. The textbook is the MOAC or Microsoft Official Academic Course Administering Windows Server 2012 R2. This is the textbook that I have in front of me. There is a lab workbook as well, and that's what we're actually going to be working through in the future videos. And this is what the lab workbook looks like. So once we get through the lab setup, we'll be going through each of these individual labs. Alright, so let's get started. I use Hyper-V on my machine. I find that it's easier for me to work with. However, I found several people who like to use alternative virtual machines, and you can absolutely do that, but keep in mind that I'm going to be using Hyper-V because it's basically included with the Windows. So to get Hyper-V installed on your machine now, caveat, if you have Windows 8, you will not have Hyper-V. I have Windows 8.1 Pro, and that does come with Hyper-V. I just have to allow the installation of it. I'm not sure if Hyper-V comes readily available with Windows 10. So that's something somebody will need to look up and let me know. Alright, so let's take a look to see where Hyper-V can be installed. So I'm going to right click on my Windows icon and go into Programs and Features and turn Windows Features on or off. So you see I already have Hyper-V checkmarked and everything seems to be installed properly, so I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. If you've had to checkmark Hyper-V, you're going to need to do a reboot. So you'll go ahead and reboot and then resume the video. Alright, now once you have Hyper-V installed, we're going to go ahead and right click, and I'll do a search and type in, search. I'm just going to type in Hyper, and here's my Hyper-V manager. I'm going to right click on it, and I want to pin it to my taskbar so it's easy for me to locate. So here's my Hyper-V machine. Now before we open up the machine, I want to create folders that are going to store my virtual machine and virtual disks. So this is my shortcut for this particular series. So you see this is my root drive, and I've already created a folder called 70-411. Go ahead and delete this. So I have nothing on here right now except my images. I don't have anything for Hyper-V on here. I'm going to go ahead and right click and new folder, and I'll call this virtual disks, and then right click and new folder virtual machines. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. Also, before you get started, make sure that you have enough RAM to run these labs. I have 16 gig of RAM and a terabit hard drive for storage. Now if you're not sure what you have, if you go down to your Windows icon and right click and go into System, see I have my 64-bit and here's my installed RAM 16-bit. I'm running an Intel Core i7 with 2.6 gigahertz. So I'm going to close out of this and go ahead and open up my Hyper-V at this point. Alright, now some housekeeping. We're going to first create a virtual switch. Actually, we're going to create two virtual switches. So we're going to go to Virtual Switch Manager, and we're going to create an internal and then create virtual switch, And we're going to call this Contoso_int. And then click on Apply. And I want to do an external. Create a new virtual switch, new virtual network switch. Now I want to create an external switch. Create virtual switch. This one's going to be called Contoso_ext. And this is my wireless. Now, if you're wired, as we get through some of these labs, you're going to see some differences. I'm going to try and point those out as we go. But this is my wireless. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And then yes. And you'll see that I have, this is my username. I'm sorry, my computer name on this machine. Okay, so now my virtual switches have been created. Now we're going to go into Hyper-V settings. And here we have the virtual hard disks. It's basically asking you, where do you want us to store the virtual hard disks that are created during these installations? So I'm going to click on Browse, and this is virtual hard disks. So I'm going to select virtual disks and select folder. Do the same thing with machine, browse, virtual machines, select folder, and then OK. All right, now we're ready to get started on adding the virtual machines. Now, before you get started, you want to make sure you have all the proper software. So I'm going to go into software and pull up my lab instructions. So here's the list of software. I'm going to move this over here, move this over here. So this first one is Microsoft Windows Server 2012 Standard Installation Disk. That is going to be this one right here. So I'm going to do New, Folder, Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard ISO. And I'm going to put that in there. Okay. The next one, okay, this is saying you need a disk and an ISO. I only have the ISO. I can always mount it to my live machine if I need the disk. Update for Internet Explorer 11 for Windows Server 2012. This is the KB2901549, which is right here. So I'm going to do New, Folder, Update for IE 11, Server 2012 R2, KB2901549. And I'm going to put that in there. Then we need the ADMX migrator, which is here. So New. And this is just an easy way for me just to make sure I have all the correct software before we get started. ADMX migrator. here. And then we need the network, Microsoft Network Monitor NM34. And that's what this is. New folder, Microsoft Network Monitor. And then we need the System Center 2012 monitoring pack. And that is what this is. New folder, System Center 2012 monitoring pack. And then Windows Assessment and Deployment, ADK. So here's my ADK. New folder, Windows Assessment and Deployment, ADK. Put that in there. And the auto-unattend.xml. I got this from the publisher website. Although it doesn't say it in those instructions, you're also going to need Windows 8.1. Alright, so I know I have all my files here, so I'm going to go ahead and close. So we're going to create 3 machines. We're going to first create our domain controller, and then our server 1, and then server 2. Now these should be able to be done pretty quickly. Oh, that's not true. I'm going to try and basically start this one as soon as this one is done, and then go back into this one to do what we need to do before going into here and finishing this one up. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to first do our domain controller. So now I'm going to right click, new, virtual machine, and I'm going to call this our WDC01, and you'll see that's being stored in my virtual machine. And then next, I'm going to go ahead and let it default to generation 1, and next, and I'm going to put in 2048 here, and then use dynamic memory, and then click on, so just make double check on that. .2048, and then we're going to allow for 70 gig. So next, and I'm going to go ahead and connect this with my internal switch, and then next, and then assign 70 gig here, and then next, and I want to install the operating system from an ISO, so I'm going to browse and go into my Microsoft Windows Server 2012, select it, and open. Click on Next, and Finish. Now all we've done is we've added the machine and attached the ISO. Now we have to allow it to install to that machine. So now I'm going to double click on my little green button to start it. Okay, and I'll go ahead and click on next and then install now. I'm going to pause the video while I put the serial number in.
Okay, Michael sold my stacker.
Okay, now we're going to go ahead and select Windows Server R2 Standard Server with GUI or Server Core. We want to go with the Server GUI because I don't want to really get into command line because there's just too much. So I want to make it simple to learn Server 2012. So we're going to go with the Server with GUI and then next. But if you only want the bare essentials, you would go with the Server Core and work everything from command line. And then next, custom. And then next. And I'm going to pause the video while we wait for these to install. Okay, I've finished installing Windows. Now we're going to go ahead and add the password for the administrator, which is PA $W0RD. And this is going to be the password that we're going to use for everything. And that's a 0, by the way. Alright, finish. And let it finalize the settings. And we're going to click on this little icon up here to do the Control-Alt-Delete and log in with the password. Log in again because because it asks you to verify the size of the screen you want to use. Now it's making me log in again. And I'm just going to wait for it to fully boot into Server Manager, so I'm going to let this pause the video for a moment and wait for it to come up. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and make some adjustments to our domain controller. The first thing we're going to do is click on Local Server. And we're going to adjust the time zone. And I'm on the Eastern time zone. Here it is. And then OK. And then OK. Now the next thing we're going to do is go into our IPv4 address and then double click, properties, okay, now we're on Internet Protocol version 4. We're going to go into properties. And we're going to use the following IP address. One 192.168.1.50. Let me confirm that it's correct. 192.168.1.50. Okay. So I'm just going to move this over here for a moment. From here, we're going to click on tab. We'll let it default to that. Put in 192.168. Okay, and then the preferred DNS. 192.168.1.50. But we're also going to do advanced and add 192.168. .100.55. And then click on OK, or add, and then OK, and then OK, close, close. I'm going to close out of this. Now we're going to adjust the computer name. Click on here. Now, a lot of students, when I've been teaching this before, want to just put the computer name here. This isn't the name, this is the description. So we actually have to click here to change the name. And we want to call this RWDC01. And we're going to leave it set up as work group because we don't have a domain name server set up yet. And it's going to make us reboot. And then close. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Restart Now, and we'll continue the video after this is done. Okay, now I need to log back in. And then again, wait for the server manager to come back up. Okay, now we're going to go back to local server. Okay, now you'll see we have the domain, the name assigned, still assigned to a work group. So now we need to go ahead and add the domain name service. So we're going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, and Next, Next, Next. We want to do the Active Directory domain services, and add features, and the DNS server, and add features. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and click on Next. Wait. Okay, next. And then next, 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 and install. Now while that's working on that, what we're going to do is minimize this. Go into our Hyper-V, go into Settings, click on our DVD, click on None. That's going to release that ISO so we can use it for something else, and then click on OK. Now we're going to go ahead and add another machine while we're waiting for that other, or the main to install. So new virtual machine. We're going to call this Server01, and then next, next, 2048, use dynamic, and next. We're going to go ahead and again connect it to the internal, and next. And I just want to double check the lab guide. 2048, and this one's only going to be 60. So 60. And then next, and again, we're going to use that ISO again. So we're going to click on our image file, and you'll see that it's already attached, or it's already been selected for us. Click on Browse just in case. There we go. And then Open. And now it's going to let us click on Next and then Finish. And I'll go ahead and double click that on our little green button and minimize our Hyper-V for now. There we go. And then next. Install now. And let's take a look at our domain controller. Oops. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Close. And I'm going to pause this for a moment while I add the serial to the other machine, to server 1. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and get them back on server 1 because I just want to get this installation started. I'm going to click on the GUI and then Next. Accept the terms and then Next. Custom. Next. And we're going to allow this to finish doing its install. Now while it's doing its install, we're going to go back to our domain controller and promote the little yellow triangle. Click on Promote this server to a domain controller. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add new forests. And the domain name for the root is contoso.com. And then next. Okay, domain controller options. We're going to put in our password, and again, it's going to be that capital P, little a, $, W0RD, and then confirm it. And then click on Next. And we'll click on Next again. And then Next. And Next. And then Next again. While this is running, we can go down to our new folder here. Sorry, Explorer. We want to click on, double click on our C drive and right click, new folder, and we're going to call this software, and then enter. And then we want to right click, go down into properties, sharing. We're going to share everyone, add, read write, share, yes, turn on network discovery, click on done, advanced sharing, and we want to do permissions, and you'll see that everyone has full control, and that's fine. Click on OK, and then OK, and then close, and then close. Okay, it looks like all prerequisites checks have passed successfully. We're going to click on install, and that's going to take a few minutes, so let's check over to our server 1. And you'll see we just created the software folder. And I'm going to show you how to do this in just a minute. And again, we're going to use that same password, PA $W0RD. And then finish. Okay, and you'll see that the domain controller about to be signed out, so I'm going to go ahead and click on close. So this is going to do a reboot. So I'm going to minimize this for a moment. And I'm back on server 1. I do a lot of flipping in between just to try to maximize the amount of time. So as you can see, it sometimes takes time to do different installations and so on and reboots. So rather than going through line by line by line by line, I try to consolidate as much as possible. Okay, so now I have my server 1 and my domain controller side by side. My domain controller is still in the process of rebooting, so I'm going to go ahead and boot into or sign into my server 1. Now we haven't assigned this to domain yet, so we're just going to log in with as administrator for this machine, again using our password. Okay, you'll see that we've now booted server 1 into the server manager. We're going to again go ahead and go right to the local server. I'm still waiting on my domain to finish rebooting. So I'm in a pretty safe place at this point. What I'm going to do is go to my Hyper-V, click on Settings, and I'm again going to release that ISO. And I'm going to go ahead and create server 2 just to get that done. Again, store virtual. Next, next. Okay, again, we've got 2048 and 40. Pause, that's why I put in the license for server 2. Okay, so then again we're going to go with the GUI. Next. Again, accept the terms. Next. Custom. Next. And let that install in the background. Okay, so let's go back to server 1. So again, the first thing we're going to do is go into our time zone. Change that to Eastern. Click on OK, and then OK. And we're going to go to our IP address. Double click. Properties. IPv4 and properties. Two, 168.1. This one's going to be 60 tab, and then 192.168.1, and then 50. That's this right here. Now we'll go ahead and click on OK, and then close, close, and close. Okay, now I've got to flip over to my domain controller, sign in first, and we're going to click on Contoso Administrator, and then our password. minimize Server01 for just a minute. Double check my instructions for the domain controller. So we're going to do this before we assign Server01 to the domain of contoso.com. Okay. Again, we're in the domain controller. We want to go into Tools, and then DNS. We're going to expand that, our domain, our WDC01. We're going to expand forward lookup, and you'll see we already have contoso.com on here. So we're going to right click it, go into Properties. We want to change this from secure only to secure and unsecure. Here where it says, I'm going to click apply before I do anything else. Okay, so we clicked on change. It says store the zone in Active Directory. It's already being stored there, so that's fine. So we're going to go ahead and click on OK. And now we're going to look up the reverse lookup zones. When I expand that, you'll see there's nothing on there. So now we're going to right click, new zone, and next. Next, next, next. 192.168.1. Next. Next. Finish. And we're going to close the DNS console, so let's go ahead and close out of this. Now we're going to install the DHCP. So again, we're going to go to Manage. Okay, on our domain, click on Manage, Add Roles, next, next, next. Now I want to add the DHCP and add features. and then next, 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 and install. While that's installing, I'm going to flip over to my server 2 and we're going to assign that password. Okay, so again, we're using that password throughout, and then finish. Okay, now that DHCP has been installed, we're going to go ahead and click on Complete DHCP Configuration. And then Next. And Commit. And then Close. And then close again. Okay, so now what we're going to do is click on our tools and click on our DHCP to open up our console. Minimize that for a minute. Go. And I'm going to expand this and then expand the IPv4. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to right click on IPv4 and select New Scope. Click on Next. And we're going to call this Main Scope. And then Next. Under the start IP address, we're going to put in 192.168.1 and then 20. So I'm going to change that to 30. And for the ending IP, we're going to type in 192.168.1 and 40. Now we're going to go ahead and click on Next. Next, we're going to change this to 1 day. And then click on Next. And then we're going to let it default to yes. I want to configure these options now. Click on Next. Click on Next. We already have contoso.com set up as the parent domain. And for the IP address, we have 192. Ooh, that should be 168. Where did I get 186? I'm going to cancel out of it for a minute. Right click. That's where I messed up. Edit. You can see how easy it is to mess up. It's typos. And let's try this again. We're going to right click, New Scope, Next. Main Scope, Next, 192.168.1, and then 30, 192.168.1, and then 40, and then Next, Next, changes to 1 day, Next, Next. Next. Here we have the Contoso, that's better. 192.168.1.50. And then next. Next. Yes, I want to activate this scope now. Next. And finish. Now we're going to select on the Dhcp contents and right click, and you'll see that it looks like it's already authorized. Okay, so it looks like it's already authorized. So now we're going to go ahead and close out of our console. Alright. And we've already created our software folder. So let's see if we can connect to the live machine to get those contents. So we're going to open up a file folder and click on Network. And click on there to change, turn on Network Discovery. It does see my machine, that's a good thing. So what I'm going to do, network, and there's the software. And we're going to copy all of this Control-C. These came from something else that I was previously working on, so don't worry about this or this. We'll actually get that when we go through the WSUS. So now I'm going to go into my C drive, my software, and then Control-V. Alright, while that's working on that, I'm going to go to my Server 1, and I want to assign this to the domain controller. So I'm going to click on here, and again we're going to do change, Server01. Now we're going to click domain and type in contoso.com. Put in the administrator and then our password. And it should accept it. Still thinking. Okay, welcome to contoso.com domain. Good, now we're connected. Okay, and then close. I want to restart later. So I actually want to shut this off, just for now. Right click and shut down. And I'm going to minimize this machine. And I'm still copying here. So let's take a look at the Server02. So go ahead and log in. Okay, I'm going to finish setting up Server 2. So I'm going to click on local server. And again, I want to go to time zone. change this to Eastern. And then OK. And then OK. And then I want to go here. Properties. Now in the lab setup guide, it specifies the IP address as being 192.168.1.60. However, that address has already been assigned to server 1. You can't have two machines with the same IP address. So this is going to be one 192.168.1.70. Now the lab setup instructions also say to use preferred DNS server of 192.168.1.70. However, again, we've been using the 192.168.1.50. There have been times where I see typos in these lab setup instructions, so we're going to go with what I think is correct. Close, 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 go to computer name, and then change. So again, we did Server02 under the computer name and the domain of contemptuous.com, and then OK, and then log in.